So blessings, let's talk about Pluto stationing retrograde. Quite an important movement in the ether, in the collective, the earth, and for ourselves individually, especially for those of us who have fixed signs at 0 degrees, or up to, I would say, from 0 to 3 degrees. There's a 3-degree orb that I've observed over many years, specifically for Pluto's movement, because Pluto is the slowest moving planet. So one might think, well, if I've got something at 3 degrees, Pluto's not going to be there for a couple of years' time. But through my observation over a very long period of time, even though it's 3 degrees away, 2 to 3 degrees away, up to 3, that portal is open for the individual in question who has something at 0 of fixed signs. So this retrograde period, which will take us through till October of 2023, is happening in between eclipses, right? We had the solar eclipse in Aries. We are just a day or less away from the lunar eclipse in Scorpio. Pluto squares both those eclipses. And in July, when the moon's nodes transition out of Taurus, Scorpio into Libra, Aries, Pluto will be at 29 degrees of Capricorn because it's going backwards. And at that point, the nodes will be 29 Aries, Libra, because the nodes move backwards in the zodiac. So there comes in Pluto again in his retrograde zone, squaring the new transition of the nodes. So we've had Pluto squaring the nodes, 2 sets of nodes, the Taurus, Scorpio nodes, and then the new nodes that come in July. So that really sets the tempo, for 2023. There's so much chaos and destruction, deconstruction taking place. I don't like to focus on that too much because I find it really draining, exhausting, and disheartening. I do like to be up to date and aware of movements and things that are shifting and changing, and sometimes that does include conflicts and things like that, but only to have an awareness about it as opposed to getting dragged into it, right? Because Pluto in Aquarius is, in no uncertain terms, going to expose the darker side of different groups and different communities on this earth plane. And it's already begun, and it's begun in a really negative, dark, toxic way already. And the two, and I'm not going to focus on it, but the 2 groups that and this has been going on for some time, but it seems to be blowing up a lot more at the moment, is the transgender communities and certain religious communities as well. There's extreme conflict between those communities at the moment. Community and groups, regardless of the philosophical orientation or belief structure connected to any particular group, is basically corresponds to Aquarius, right? So we are going to see, unfortunately, a lot of the darker shades of groups and communities through conflict of ideologies. Aquarius is a sign that corresponds to ideologies as well. So that's kind of there and will be there for a long time because Pluto is going to be in Aquarius for 20 years. So we're only just sort of seeing an amplification of perhaps what's to come over a very long time, which isn't very encouraging, but there are lots of encouraging things about Pluto in Aquarius. However, today's focus is predominantly about Pluto retrograde, having gone retrograde in the sign of Aquarius, which yes, Coco? I think Coco wants to say something to you guys. Sorry, I have to attend. Just come say hi to everyone. Say hi, everyone. Hi, everyone. Pluto will track 29, 28, and 27 degrees of Capricorn over the 6-month journey before he goes direct again. He, she, whatever gender you want to ascribe to a planet. And so there's a couple of really interesting things here. First of all, Pluto corresponds to the soul. It's the soul of the individual, and then it's the soul of the collective human race as well. It's very interesting to me that Aquarius, that the word Aquarius, when you go to etymology, the root meaning of the word Aquarius, the month, pardon me, sorry, let me just reframe that. When you go to the root meaning of the month of February, which is a time when Aquarius season is active, February means to purify. And that, I really love that. I love the root, looking into etymology, the root meaning of words. Sometimes it's just like a light bulb goes off, and sometimes it's really inspiring, and often it just gives you a lot more understanding, right, of a particular subject or theme. So, you know, Pluto, sorry, Coco's there. You guys can't see her, but there she is. Because Pluto corresponds to the soul, and the name February corresponds to the term to purify. Oh my God, you're so cute. I feel that this retrograde period, first of all, Pluto in Aquarius over a 20-year journey is going to largely speak to this purification process that every soul would benefit to undergo a journey of purification, which is not a one-night thing. That dark night of the soul expression is never one night, right? And in the bigger sort of picture, in the bigger context, it's so obvious that the 3D reality, the way of the world in the personality, has lost its way from its soul, right? And so, you know, it's obvious that in bigger picture terms that there is an undeniable need for people to really get back in touch with what soul means, what soul is, and what it means to live a soulful life. Because everything that has been created, well, not everything, but a lot of things that have been created on that external 3D reality have all largely been about the personality, the insatiable greed of the personality, and the constant consumption, you know, of all of the stuff that goes within that external reality, which has, you know, subsequently led to so many people just losing touch with soul. And even though these are just words that I'm using to describe something that I think is really meaningful and really profound, for those of you that do resonate with that, you will understand, you will know this yourself, you will be feeling this yourself. When a planet stations to retrograde, any planet for that matter, but especially with Pluto, because Pluto corresponds to the soul, the retrograde journey, it has a few layers and themes to it. The most obvious and the most spoken about is that, you know, a retrograde period is a time to reflect, a time to pause, a time to contemplate, and so forth. Because we're talking about a planet, in this case, referring to the soul going retrograde, it's, oh, she's pressed a button and I just hope that hasn't interfered with the recording. Sorry, she's really distracting me, but I feel her energy is important, so I'm just going to allow it. Sorry if it's disrupting you guys. I'll just have a drink of water and recollect my thoughts. Do you want to go back to your little bed, or do you want to sit there? No. So Pluto retrograde and Pluto itself, which is a symbol of the soul, and the retrograde journey implies an internal process or an internal assimilation or an internal reflection. It's a bit of a double signature, right? It's the soul going through a portal for the next 6 months that's so connected to perhaps figuring out a lot more, you know, from a place of truth, right, as opposed to the external reality, which is largely projected and defined by numerous beliefs, ideologies, perspectives, projections, and so forth. And so to come to a resolution of truth within our own heart and soul, we must turn within. It never comes from out there. I mean, sure, there are things happening out there, or things we read or things we listen to that may provide a spark of inspiration of some kind. That's absolutely the case in you know, in many different situations. But ultimately, to be able to be your own authority, which is to go within and find resolution and truth from within your own heart and soul, that's probably the most authentic way to do that, to embark on that journey, to assimilate that process, to try and work with that and understand that. So that's what Pluto really invites us into over the next 6 months. Okay, so I think what I'll do is oh, don't press on the buttons, Coco Girl. Have we muted now? I hope we haven't muted. No, I'm muted. Can I finish my video and then I'll attend to you again? Is that okay? Oh, okay, say bye. Some might find that really disruptive, but animals are an absolute gift from the divine source creation to all things, and from our gorgeous Mother Earth. So I believe in total respect and honor for the animal kingdom, and that includes little interruptions such as that one, which has sort of distracted me, but I'll come back very clearly. Just give me 2 seconds. I'm going to share my screen and just bring up the chart so that we can get some visuals. Just expand that a little bit. Just go straight into, this is a chart for today. So Pluto, there's Pluto over there. You can see the red R, which stands for retrograde, which just occurred a couple of days ago. As I said, this station retrograde period has occurred in between 2 eclipses, the first 2 eclipses of 2023, the solar eclipse in Aries and the lunar eclipse, which is less than a day away. You can see the moon is currently at 23 Libra. So when it reaches about, what was it? I think it was it 15 or 16 of Taurus Scorpio, right? So it's not too far away. And Pluto has, you know, it's slowed down, changed directions in between these eclipse portals, which is really meaningful and really significant, both for us personally and collectively. And in what way? Well, from the point of view of, because Pluto is going to go back into Capricorn, there's something that's obviously still unfinished about Pluto's business in Capricorn. And the interlude of Pluto in Aquarius has been quite brief. And that would have been the case because Pluto moves so slowly, right? But because it is such a slow moving planet, and because its energy is so incredibly intense, and because it stays retrograde for half of the year, then the matters that assimilate or evolve or transpire through Pluto portals have, you know, a very specific journey, right, and time frame, as it were. Things don't just happen suddenly with Pluto. They sort of, they seem to dwell in the depths of the soul, and, you know, just sort of simmer around there. And there's a lot of clearing, right, and a lot of resolving and a lot of figuring things out going on when Pluto is retrograde, and specifically from the point of view of your own soul's desires, because Pluto retrograde takes us into, well, it's the opportunity to detach from the consensus reality and everything that pulls our concentration and direction and energy and time and focus onto the external through everything that's going on, or through specific things that we feel drawn or attracted to, and a lot of which doesn't come necessarily from our own place of truth or even our own point of view, but just simply through everything that's just spewed out there from every environment, every stream, every field. So, but I mean, when Pluto is direct, it is also a time where we are assimilating the deeper core desires of the soul into this earthly experience. And then when it changes directions and goes retrograde, it's now a time to go back in again and lay low, as it were, and just take that time to reflect and go even deeper into the landscape of the soul's desires, specifically with this particular Pluto retrograde, because this is the first station retrograde that we are encountering with Pluto in Aquarius. It's the first one since Pluto went into Aquarius. So that's a big deal. That's very important. There's going to be many, many of those, you know, over 20 years of Pluto being in Aquarius. This is the first one. So there's something really quite specific and paramount in this particular one, because it is the beginning of what's to come, you know, over a 20-year journey, right? So we can see that there's something really profound here for each of us from a soul level. And because it's in between eclipses, and because Pluto's squaring the nodes, and because Pluto will go back to 29 degrees, that will be in around about July, and the nodes, the moon's nodes by then will be in Aries and Libra, a new transition for the nodes, and Pluto squaring them exactly. You know, these are portals for us to finish certain chapters in our life, you know, just to put it very simply. And obviously that's going to look very different for each of us, because it depends on who we are, our soul's desires, where are we at in our life right now, our age, you know, relationship status, career status, whatever it is, right? But everything that happens on that interior, on that inner level, in terms of Pluto retrograde, it's informing what the soul is seeking to further develop and evolve as it continues on its path of evolution. So it is a very profound time for those reasons. And because this is the first station retrograde since Pluto went into Aquarius, because it's happening in between eclipses, it also happened while Mercury is retrograde. And especially, you know, for the first sort of most of May is a bit of a, or at least the first half of May, let's say, is a time where there's still a lot of necessary reflection, right? And not sort of jumping impulsively into anything for that matter. That there needs to be contemplation and assimilation from within, from both our left and right brains, Gemini, Sagittarius. So, you know, finding the means to receive the data, the information that you may be looking for relative to your circumstances, and employing the Jupiter Sagittarius right brain component to give you the intuitive insight with the information that you are actually, you know, putting together, as it were. It's very much connected to Mercury retrograde. So Mercury is retrograde. Pluto is now retrograde. This is all happening in between eclipses. The next eclipse coming up less than a day away is a lunar eclipse. So lunar is another archetype and symbol for inner as well. You know, it's the feminine is more connected to the inner realms, as it were, and the masculine energies are more connected to the external and action-taking spheres of life, if you like. That's got nothing to do with gender. It's just a masculine and feminine vibration and frequency, because we both have the feminine and masculine frequencies and archetypes existing inside every single one of us, regardless of gender. And this lunar eclipse, you know, in Scorpio is, of course, square Pluto as well. So, you know, there's a few dark kind of energies floating around, you know, for lack of a better word. And because we live in a world of duality, we're always going to witness and see the darker shades of life. And a lot of that, in terms of how much we judge or identify with that, a lot of that has to do with just how integrated or not we are within ourselves and within our own dark content. Dark content isn't bad. The shadow dark side that is often demonized, it's demonized because, unfortunately, a lot of it is projected and results in behaviors and activities that are harmful, right? So that's why it's demonized. But there's another side to the darker energies within us that when somebody can integrate with that energy and have more awareness and consciousness about their own dark side, as it were, when you use that energy from a creative channel, the most incredible creativity is born out of that darkness that is often demonized, you know. So it just depends on how much awareness someone has. So lunar eclipse, Scorpio, it's, you know, it's a very palpable energy with Pluto now retrograde and the Scorpio lunar eclipse coming up. The waters are really being stirred quite heavily. You know, water, the moon corresponds to the oceans, and, you know, that is responsible for the tides of the ocean, for instance. So is the sun, for that matter. A woman's body is intricately connected to the lunation cycle. Our bodies, pardon me, are made up of about 85 to 90% of water. So the water element is, it's everywhere. It's inside us, it's out there, it's just everywhere, right? And also the lunar eclipse, moon in Scorpio, that's its full position. So if relative to traditional astrology, central dignities and debilities, the moon in Scorpio is a difficult placement. It might have, you know, really strong instincts and great X-ray visionary abilities and strong intuition and emotional control, power, you know, it has all those layers to it, but it's still in its fall. And the concept of planets being in fall or detriment is worthy of paying attention to. It's traditional, it's old school, it comes from old astrology, but it's not, I don't think it should be discarded, you know, as not being important or meaningful. So, you know, lunar eclipse with the moon in its full position, squaring Pluto, the planet being, Pluto being the planet that, you know, rules Scorpio as well. Of course, Mars does. And then, you know, we have Mars in Cancer, which has definitely been, from what I've seen over the last few weeks, the extreme anger and emotion that's based on one's subjective beliefs and ideologies. Right or wrong doesn't really matter. It's just what this energy draws out in us. And of course, Mars in Cancer is also in its full position. And, you know, so people are very protective about their tribes, whatever tribe that is that you belong to. And, you know, Cancer is a very subjective sign. We must remember that. So subjectivity can be a problem when you're talking about the matters that connect to the whole human family, because then there's this Mars being the planet of war and conflict. There's conflict about what I subjectively believe and see as being right or wrong versus what you subjectively believe as being right or wrong. And it's a very personal subject. It's a very personal matter, connecting to my tribe, my family, my children. We know there's a lot of stuff going on the planet at the moment about the safety of children. And I still think that the safety of children is paramount, regardless of the outbreaks of the different conflicting ideologies that are present at the moment on this 3D Earth plane, because there's always going to be something, right? This is not a new thing. We've always had conflicts between nations, countries, states, politics, you know, you name it. It's always there. But we're just seeing a very amplified version of what's to come with Pluto's ingress into Aquarius at that more non-integrated soul level. So the opposite to that is the projected darker components of oneself, right? But, you know, I remain hopeful because, like I said, you know, Pluto is the soul. The name February means to purify. Aquarius, of course, is about purification in some kind of way as well. It's, you know, clean air. Aquarius is an air sign. We do need to resolve matters of having clean air on the earth. You know, that there are lots of problems. I'm not saying I believe any agenda necessarily. I'm just aware that, you know, over so many years of so much pollution and so many matters around energy that are being misused or manipulated. You know, let's bring in Tesla for a minute, you know, who showed the path to free and clean energy, you know. Anybody who brings that up gets shut down immediately. So, you know, there's a lot of stuff, a lot of problems still. And I think the other matters of tension that we are feeling and or witnessing is also still very much connected to the Venus star point that ingressed into Libra October of 2022, which was a massive transition because that only occurs every 100 or so years. well, that transition into Libra in, about 4 years' time, it's going to go, that Libra and Venus star point is going to go back to 0 Scorpio, because the Libra and Venus star points move backwards in the zodiac, just like the moon's nodes do. So we've still got one more sector, one more chapter, even though it's a small chapter. It's not like if we had, 50 volumes of a particular books. In that 50-volume book, this Venus star point going back to 0 Scorpio would be like, just a final little chapter in the last volume, the 50th volume. There's just something there that hasn't quite been completed yet, right? And that translates into quite a few years in terms of time-space reality, right? Because it doesn't happen for another 4 years where it goes back into Scorpio out of Libra. And then 4 years after that, it finally, starts the journey back into Libra without ever visiting Scorpio again. So when something is finishing, there's an intensification that is palpable in the collective, in the ether, in our psyche, from our own soul's position as well. Think about the matters of Pluto in Capricorn, which we are still at the final, tips of that, because Pluto is going retrograde into Capricorn, right back to 27 degrees of Capricorn. So, we've had Pluto in Capricorn since 2008. We've seen the incredible evolutionary transformations on that external collective sphere, what it's been. We've seen it, whether how much people are tuned into what's real and what's true is, it's an individual thing. But as a collective family, we have seen a lot of things disrupt, right, over many, many years. Especially when it comes to systems and structures of society, right? That's been Pluto smashing through Capricorn. And it's, the point is that the last, I would say the last 3 years since we've had the world be sort of, spun around, as it were, everyone's life was jolted in some kind of way with what's been happening the last 3 years, and some people's lives are still being jolted and impacted, in pretty bad ways subsequently, right? That's a fact as well, whether we want to admit that or not. It's a fact. It's just how it is, sadly. So it's the end of, a planet of the force of Pluto, which is the most powerful force in the chart, finishing the journey, right, of the Capricorn degrees, which he's doing this year. So we've got that, still resolving, right? And that then speaks to our own individual fate and destiny and evolution, because fate, destiny, evolution all correspond back to Pluto. So we've got, the Venus star point in Libra, which is going to go back to Scorpio, which is a Pluto-ruled sign, right? We've got Pluto still finishing his final business in Capricorn, and for the more immediate time, we've got, Pluto retrograde. Now I'm getting a bit hot. Pluto retrograde with Mercury retrograde, and in between eclipses. So my suggestion and my reflections and my sense about Pluto retrograde here is, well, if you've got cardinal planets, at the late degrees, so 27, 28, 29, cardinal signs, so Aries, Libra, Cancer, Capricorn, they're the cardinal signs, then Pluto's retrograde journey into those degrees is giving you one final opportunity, if you like, you know, to finally finish and clear and complete the matters that correspond to Pluto and those cardinal planets in your chart, and or points, because if you've got angles being the 4 angles of the chart, just in case there's beginners watching, that's all. I just don't want to assume that everyone knows every single level, right? So these are the angles of the chart, right? We've got the ascendant, the descendant, the MC, the IC. Now, there'll be many people that have these angles at 27, 28, 29 degrees of the cardinal signs, which again are Aries, Libra, Cancer, Capricorn. And if that is the case, then your whole life is undergoing immense